Hello everyone, welcome to episode 30, the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break. I'm your host, Neil LaFortune. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on this landmark episode, a chat with my friend Gerard Gannon. I'm very excited, and Gerard is here already. This is a reboot of an interview that we did back in May. And because I had some power outage here at the house, there was a storm. My internet was down, the Wi-Fi was down, so it didn't save onto the IG, into my Instagram. And conversely, I couldn't save it anyway and couldn't upload it to YouTube. So I just want to thank Gerard for being so amazing and accommodating and able to, hey Ralph, how are you? Nice to see you. And accommodating for us today because I know he is a busy man. But I've been reading through this amazing book by Chet Falzarano, available at gretschgear.com. Check it out. There's a hard copy version of this as well, hardcover. And I'm just browsing through it again. Years ago, I read it and absolutely loved it. But a little bit about my guest, Gerard Gannon. He's primarily, and this is according to his website, a freelance drummer based in Edmonton, Alberta, plays all styles of music from polka to pop, folk to funk and fusion, but he's been kept very busy playing country, blues, and rock with such artists as Brett Kissel, Jason Blaine, Gord Bamford, Samantha King, many, many others. He's also an educator and a gear expert. I am going to send Gerard to join me on here, and I'm going to have a sip from the Gretsch mug. And I'm waiting for you, Gerard, to accept that. We are going to connect, and I hope everybody is doing well. It's turning into winter here, and we have beautiful early couple of days this week, and I'm not sure if we are connected here. Gerard, hey Daryl, Mr. Daryl Green from a couple of weeks ago. What an amazing drummer. I had some people actually reach out after the show with Daryl and say, man, I checked him out, and what a great sound that he has. And so Gerard, if you are watching, and I hope that you are, I did send you a request to join. Oh, you're not able to join. Let's see what's happening. There we go. I'm going to send it to you again. But I recommend that you go back onto YouTube and check out the past episodes, the other 29 episodes. There he is, my man, Gerard Gannon. How are you, sir?
Fine. How are you, Neil?
What's happening?
Oh, not a lot. Just doing the COVID thing, man.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah. So
everything's there.
Well, we're good here. We're busy. We're doing things here since there's no gigs at this point. So doing a lot of different things here, but Ontario is a real hotbed. Not where we are so much, and we're really careful. And yeah, how's things with you? What's been happening since May? It's been 6 months since our first interview, and I explained to our viewers here what had happened. What's been going on with you?
Well, slowly but surely trying to get a home studio up and running. And it's taking some time, and it takes a lot of patience for me because it's a lot of it's pretty new for me. So working on that, and to be honest, you know, the biggest I guess the biggest achievement I've made all year is getting a lot of home renos done throughout COVID. So no gigs, work on the house. I have an older house, and so we're trying to bring that up to date.
Yes, your wife and my wife, I think, are cut from the same cloth. Although my wife is the one that does the renos. Seriously.
Yeah,
I don't. She built this room with my stepsons, so it's pretty.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yes, it's good. Well, that's good, and really nice to see you, and thanks for accommodating us here at the program here.
Yeah, no problem, man. Good to see you again, Neil.
Nice. So let's go back to the beginning. So there's going to be some new people that really don't know anything about you here. So let's talk about like go back from the very beginning. How old were you when you started to play? What was that? What was that like? How old were you? What was the influence?
Well, yeah, I have stories from aunts and uncles of being at their houses when I was, like almost just a baby and banging on pots and pans. Kind of the typical story that everybody has. You just sort of always sort of tapping on things and hitting things. So that's the stories I've heard. I don't remember that stuff, but I remember getting a WFL or a Ludwig, I guess, but it still had the WFL logo on it. Practice pad, one of those doorstop practice pads, and a pair of sticks. When I went for Christmas one year from my brother, I think, when I was probably 11 or 12 or something like that. So, with a practice pad and no lessons, that I sort of ran out of interest in that pretty quickly. Although I had a pair of sticks, which was great. Yeah, and I kind of did what a lot of people do who either can't afford or just whatever, don't have the means to have a drum set. And I sort of built my own home little drum set on the end of my bed with a pair of pants as a snare drum and stuff like that. And I'll tell you, it was good for my single strokes. They were really good back then. I mean, but so that's kind of what I was doing before I had drums. And my brother had a friend come over one summer and leave his drums in our garage all summer. So there was 2 months of an actual drum set. And, I don't remember what they were, but, some of the stuff that actually people are collecting these days, the made in Japan stuff that was, not outstanding tone wise, they had kind of rougher bearing edges and stuff like that. But for me, I still remember what the garage smelled like with those drums in there. And it still takes me back to those memories and jamming with my brother and his friends. And finally getting to play music with people at whatever level. It didn't matter. I just enjoyed it and knew I loved it. And I don't know what age I would have been at that point, but I'm guessing around 14. I knew I had to have a drum set, and I ended up getting one finally when I was probably 15 or almost 16, I guess, before I finally had a drum set that was comprised of, I remember the Paiste 602 hi-hats, Formula 602 hats that I liked, and a couple of a Zilco cymbal, which I think was, I don't know if it was a lower range Zildjian made in Canada, but I think it was made in the Sabian, what is now the Sabian factory.
Yep.
And then there was a really heavy 18-inch Zildjian that must have been more of a ride cymbal. And then it was called Texas. These drums were called Texas, but they had a pearl snare drum. The floor tom was mismatched and finished and eventually cracked. The wrap eventually cracked. It didn't matter. I had something to play on. And I remember doing my first audition for a band about 6 months into having that drum set and playing on that kit, even though I didn't even have a proper seat at that time. So did that and played in a band almost from, the outset of learning drums and having drum set and things like that. Eventually I can't remember what I was doing. I think I was working at a catering place or something like that. And I eventually moved up to, I bought the old Tama Imperial Star kit. You remember the one that Gilmore from Triumph used? The big,
oh yeah,
sort of like an Octoplus Ludwig kit. I was definitely into lots of drummers at the time, but primarily Neil Peart at the time. And so I actually took the 12, 13, and 15 and put double heads on them. That took forever to get the parts, but I installed the bottom heads on them because they were all concert toms. And used the 18 224-inch kick drums, and I had ordered the 6, 8, 10, and 12 because I had first started out with one kick, and I think it was like a 13, 14, 15, 16 concert toms and an 18 floor. And then I ordered the other kick drum and the 6, 8, 10, 12 and built this monster kit that, hey, we all loved back then, it was whatever it was, late 70s. And it was a lot of fun. And I was always kind of into sound and the sound of the drums. And my buddy I was talking to the other day calls me a tone chaser. I don't think that's a compliment necessarily, but I definitely am a little bit obsessed with sound. And I think that's ultimately what led me to Gretsch drums. It was kind of a no-brainer. But so that was a fun kit. And we played a bunch of Rush covers at that time. We were trying to cover sort of a gamut, everything from Foreigner to Rush to whatever was popular at the time. And then the 80s hit and it was cut back on, got rid of the concert toms and eventually down to one kick drum. And, so you started to sort of streamline based on the music that we were playing. And that turned into an original project that lasted quite a few years. So that band.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Any recordings? Are there anything out there of this band?
Oh man, you know, I'm still friends with the singer in the band. He actually plays in Gord Bamford's band. His name's Mark Puffer, a very talented guy and amazing guy,
Yeah.
person and singer and musician. So we're still in touch quite a bit. And so I just kind of gathered up some old tapes he had asked for. He wants to, I think, sort of filter through that stuff and find anything that's worth, you know, getting onto the computer and editing and sort of fixing up so that we can all bear listening to it. So that's in the works, I think. But
What was the band called? What was the
band?
name?
When it was an original band, it was called Big Screen.
Mm,
And
that's really cool.
yeah, it was a fun band. It was a very fun band, and we were just a trio, and we were doing the whole Police and Rush thing in terms of Taurus pedals. We had some MIDI pedals on one side of the stage and some actual Moog Taurus pedals on the other side of the stage, and people came out and saw us and said, "You guys kind of sound like a mix between U2, Rush, and the Police." And for us, that was a compliment because those were probably our favorite bands at the time, and maybe Rush was already kind of fading in terms of what we were listening to and being influenced by a little bit, but they were still, you know, they had been a favorite of ours for a long time. So that wasn't a bad thing to hear. And that eventually turned into still three of us eventually playing along to Sequencer, and just, we made a lot of noise for three guys, and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't that we eventually tried keyboard players and stuff like that, but by that time, you know, everybody was getting really busy with other projects and things like that. So the whole interest in the project had started to wane a little bit. So we never really pushed it with a keyboard player or adding another person at all. But it was a lot of fun. It's a great time, actually.
This reminds me of our first interview, and I realized like how much in common we have musically from our tastes and from music we played early on, and
right.
It's uncanny. It's parallel, right? We're probably around like the same kind of age, but that's wild. Any exposure to Gretsch drums at that point?
Oddly enough, when I first started playing and had my little cheap kit, and I don't think I'd even moved on to the Tamas yet. The band that I wasn't quite in yet, but had auditioned for. I mean, I got the gig, you know, right away. But I remember going to I guess the leader's house, and there was a Gretsch set sitting in their garage because they had been jamming with a neighborhood drummer, and it was a Gretsch kit. And I remember even at that point in time seeing that it was, I think I did have my Tamas, I'm not sure, but I remember seeing them and thinking, now that is a real drum kit. And it just, you know, you have to remember, Gretsch, I believe, was the first drum set to really have the high gloss lacquer finishes, drum company. Everybody else, to my knowledge anyway, and my recollection, everybody else either.
Right.
Finish over a nice stain, and to me, and that's what this kit was. I think it was that old 70s walnut, Gretsch walnut stain.
Yes.
And it was just gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. And to me, you know, the die-cast hoops and everything, they still make a difference to me, not just sonically, of course, which is, I think, a part of the secret to the great Gretsch sound, but sort of sound like an ad. But also aesthetically, they're beautiful. They look better to me than a triple flange hoop. They just class up the drum, look, or to me, more finished. So I've always liked die-cast hoops. I didn't even know what I liked about them at the time, other than they looked beautiful, because they were sort of against the garage wall. So that was my first exposure to Gretsch, and it was just a visual.
Like furniture, right? They look like furniture. Bringing my first little Gretsch set home, my mom goes, "Wow, it looks like a table, like a beautiful piece of furniture that you can, you know, play." That's awesome. And so you would have been how old at that point when you had seen those Gretsch drums here?
Well, I think that was pretty early in that band project, so it's probably still only about 16. You know.
Did you hear them at all, or they just sat there?
I didn't. I just saw them and went, wow, whose are those? And they told me, and I really wanted to grab a drum and hit it, but at the time, maybe I was too polite. I don't know, but I didn't do it. And
you're Canadian too, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry for looking at those. Yeah, almost.
Sorry,
almost,
I know.
yeah.
Boy, they're nice, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to look up too hard.
Wow. Yeah.
I know. So when did you actually get to play? Were they in the music stores in Edmonton?
Yeah. Eventually I worked in a music store selling drums. I had gone to university for a year and a half or so, and then it was there were lots of things happening in my life, and my parents were divorcing and things like that. It was kind of like find a place to live and get a job. And I had no problem with working. I've always worked part-time jobs and, done a million things at the same time. So anyway, eventually I was really lucky to get into selling drums at what was called the Drum Shop back then. It was part of the Mother's Music chain of stores, but it was a drum-specific shop. And in those days, you had drums only in Vancouver. And then I believe over the years, from what people told us, people who traveled around the country in North America told us, by us, I mean my partner and colleague at the time and good friend today still, who worked with me at the Drum Shop. People would tell us all the time, this is a great store. You guys in drums only are kind of the thing, certainly on the western, half of the country and North America. So
right.
I remember one time so we both became Gretsch fanatics, especially my friend, because I was still kind of hung up in the Yamaha recording custom phase, and
there's those
beautiful, and I still love those, but we ended up loving Gretsch drums so much, and knowing that we were one of the only stores, that was carrying much Gretsch. And remember, at the time, all you could get was what's now it was all high-end, expensive, and fairly custom stuff, and beautiful, beautiful drums. And so at one point we ended up with, I think we had about 12 USA custom kits in our store. And
wow,
that it was a good sized store, but that was a lot of drums. We were fortunate that the owner was a drummer and kind of let us do our thing as long as the store was doing well, and it was doing pretty well under us. So but we'd have guys in from New York saying, I've never seen this many Gretsch kits in one place, ever before, and certainly not new Gretsch kits. And so that was a lot of fun. We had a great time, and didn't make any money doing that, of course, but it was fun to do, and definitely exposed me to Gretsch and, just the special sound that they have. And to me, there's not really anything that compares, but there's lots of companies that everybody builds beautiful, beautiful stuff. But for my ear, maybe because of hearing them at a young age and sort of getting used to that sound at a young age, Gretsch just became the sound that I wanted. So it was really cool when I found out that heroes like Kali Yuta, for example, became Gretsch guys after. I didn't realize he had always been a Gretsch guy because I didn't know that much about him. But when he started endorsing Gretsch drums again, or for the first time actually after Yamaha, it was kind of cool because I was already playing Gretsch, and I thought, Vinny's catching up, I'm totally kidding.
Oh. I loved seeing that old footage of him with Frank in 78 or so, playing that yellow Gretsch kit and literally sitting like 2 feet off the ground, but with that massive drum kit. Oh, it was
with all the rototoms and all that stuff.
And being such a young kid and playing a drum solo with seal calls and just some crazy stuff like that. And of course, you and I both know that one of our early drum heroes, and still very dear to my heart, is Mr. Neil Peart. He personally owned some Gretsch drums. You were aware of that, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I think I read it in one of his books that he.
Yes.
I can't remember which one of his books, but I remember him mentioning that to get back in shape. I think it was after his wife and daughter passed away, and he took his 5-year hiatus. I believe he went back to the shed on his Gretsch drums and started practicing before getting together with the band. So it was really cool to hear that story as well. I think when he was going through his drum choosing mode, where he went from Tama to Ludwig, I think there was mention at that time of a Gretsch kit that he owned, and oddly enough, oddly enough, Gretsch didn't provide him a kit to try to.
No, it was 86. I'm not sure how the company was doing, at that point. It's an awful lot of drums for them to build in a short period of time.
True.
For maybe. And what are they, I don't know. He thought that they might have been a little too warm for something that he was looking. Can you imagine if he'd ended up being a Gretsch guy?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would have been, obviously, he did amazing things for Tama and Ludwig. So, yeah, I mean, I understand that actually he was really close to playing Milestone drums as well.
Wow, I didn't know.
Point. So, yeah, that's the story that I heard as well. And so that would have been pretty amazing for Milestone. I think it might have made a little bit of difference in their potential for being around,
And they would have been very durable. I've had some Milestones over the years, some snare drums, and they sounded great. They really do. There's so many, you said, so many companies make great drums, and on backline, we don't always get Gretsch drums, and I play Pearl Masters, Yamahas, some DWs, Westburys. I'm not kidding.
On backline?
Yes, I have, and it was only in front of 5,000 people.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful. But it's really nice when we do get to play the drums that appeal to our ears and our hearts. It's nice to represent. It really is.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
So let's go back to after the original project, and you were branching out into doing other things. Did you end up playing for a living while you were teaching at the drum store? Did you transition from selling drums to playing drums?
I've never really relied 100% on drumming for my income, which is a little different. And it's and I get that, and I think that's one of the points that maybe a guy like me can make, is that I believe there's so many different ways of being involved in music, and I think you have to decide for yourself, what works for you. And for me, there's times, and for sure, that I've thought about, I wonder what it would have been like if I had done that. If, for example, there was one gig that was offered to me that was a road gig, and I kind of hesitated. Well, meanwhile, there was another fellow who jumped right on it and ended up doing that gig, and that would have been the beginning of a full-time touring gig for me, a cover band, but it was touring in clubs around Canada, and a good band too. It was actually something that I, in a way, I just sort of regretted hesitating. I just wanted to make sure it was the right decision for me, and ultimately they ended up going with another guy who said yes right away. So, right. But I think you look for me now at this. Yeah, I mean, if I was playing all the time, would I be a better player? Would I be, and certainly that's an important thing for me, always trying to be the best I can be, like it is for all of us. But I think the trade-offs for me were just too great. Right. I wanted to have a certain lifestyle, and you've got to make that decision. Yeah. I still take drumming very seriously, and actually have been very fortunate to work with people, or for people, who've allowed me a lot of freedom to be able to go and do tours, a 2-month tour opening for Brad Paisley, for example, across the country. And I had an employer who allowed me to do that. So it was pretty amazing. I mean, I was able to do a little bit of work from the road, but it's still, I certainly appreciate what I've been allowed to do,
Wow.
So yeah, so not really relied on it 100%.
No, and that's okay. So was that opening for Brad, was that with Brett Kissel?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk about that experience. So when did that happen? Brett was super, super young. He was probably 8. No, he was probably pretty young, maybe 20. Was he around there, something like that?
He would have been, 24-ish, I guess. Probably 24.
Wow. Okay.
He's always been a pretty exceptional human being in terms of knowing what he wants and going for it and not being afraid. And really not a lot will hold that guy back, that's for sure. So he was, I believe he would have been about 24.
That's unbelievable. So what great memories do you have of being alongside Brad's band and playing all those nights with Brett?
Well, it was actually, the whole experience was, challenging in terms of trying to balance my time, for sure. Because when we'd have a break, I'd be back working. I'd be back in an office working. So then I'd be jumping on a plane and going out. And so maintaining an energy level was a bit of a challenge, but overall it worked out. It was great. The whole experience. I can't really say anything negative about the experience. It was great. Still friends with the people in that band and with Brett, and Brad and his guys were awesome guys. And, watching them play every night was fantastic. And, it was a great time. You get up to your normal shenanigans in the green room or dressing room being silly. And, we've got that, I think, archived on video somewhere. But yeah, it's about trying to put on a good show, and that's certainly what Brett's all about, and he's very good at it. And so the whole band kind of, steps up and gets involved a little bit as well. And it was a short set. It always went by pretty quickly, but it was a lot of fun. It was great playing music in the big
20-minute, 30-minute set. Was it something like that?
It was a 30-minute set, yeah.
That's awesome. And you got to see Ben Caesar play every night?
I got to know Ben a little bit. Awesome player, great guy, and yeah, he was fun to watch for sure, and great to talk to, and super guy.
Yeah, wonderful. So what happened musically next for you after the Brett Kissel Band?
Well, I think I had played with Jason Blaine a few summers before that for some dates. So I was fortunate to get back. Basically, I took a little bit of a break. I mean, not completely. I was still doing some gigs locally around town here and stuff, but I wasn't really looking to be that busy. I mean, I resigned from Brett's band in early 2015 for a variety of reasons, but that was some personal stuff, family related stuff was part of it. And so I felt like I needed to take a bit of a breather and sort of worry about my health a little bit as well. So I lost a little bit of weight and felt a little, not that I was ever, ginormous or anything, but for me, I was definitely the heaviest I'd ever been in my life at the end of that tour. So, so lost a little bit of weight, focused a little bit on being at home with my wife and family, and but doing local gigs and stuff like that. But then sure enough, again, I kind of reached out to Jason, I think at one point, and said, "Hey man, if you got anything coming up, I'd sure love to play with you again." And sure enough, he said, "Oh, yeah, in fact, I do have some things coming up. It'd be great to work together again." So I played with Jason for a couple of summers, and that was pure joy musically, because I love his stuff. I love all the drummers he's had on his songs have been incredible, and lots of it's challenging to learn and to do and to execute well. And I like the songs. I like Jason's voice. So for me, that was great. And I was playing with a buddy of mine. Everybody was friends of mine, of course, as you become on a band type of gig. But one fellow in particular I played with for quite a few years, and he's from out here as well. So it was just a lot of fun and great times. So that was the next thing that I believe I was doing after Brett.
That's the gig that I first heard your name from, because I've been friends with Jason's brother Eric for a number of years, and he's like, "Oh man, do you know Gerard Gannon?" I'm like, keep hearing about this Gerard Gannon guy who's a Gretsch guy from out west, but I don't know him. He goes, and I'm going to quote him, he goes, "Man, Gerard can really rock the sticks." That's what he said. It's great. And of course he was like, "So when he plays with Jay again, you're going to have to go see him. He's amazing." And I'm like, all right. So anyway, so that's the first time that I was aware of you. And that's great. I love Jay's stuff too, and super talented guitar player, writer, singer, and
absolutely.
And he's damn handsome too, I must say. And I'm like, why are guys born with all that stuff, man? Well, I'm glad that you kept persevering and you came back, and because the road really does take its toll on you, whether people believe it or not. They think it's, we're going to go play our drums and do that, and it's easy. The traveling is the hard part.
Sure is.
The easy part is the actual show. So, that. But anyways, so what happened after Jason? What kind of things were you doing musically?
Well, I've always played, done some freelance work around town here as well. Just to, with, it's actually an amazing Edmonton singer named Samantha King, and I've played music with her since she was probably, I think she was about 20 years old when I first started playing music with her. And so, yeah, I mean, I was doing some music with her or with bands that maybe she was part of and that sort of thing. And the nice thing about Sam is that even though it was kind of a cover situation in most ways, I mean, she also had she was one of those child sort of prodigy people in terms of how she sings, how well she sings, and her abilities that way. And she had a country music type career, but she started realizing that what she really wanted to do was be in more of a blues and rock vein. So doing her gig was really fun too, because first of all, you have this amazing singer that you're playing music with, but also you're playing everything from some of the country stuff that she did when she was, I think she released her record when she was 16 or something like that, all the way to blues and rock stuff. And she's, there's always a fair amount of improvising going on stage, whether she changes up forms or if she, you just have to be pretty good at, sort of following the lead in some ways. And that was fun though, because it always made sense to me. I mean, we rarely ditched it. It usually was taking things to another level, just because she was capable of doing that, or is capable of doing that. And it's always inspiring to play music with her. So I was doing that. Yeah, just whatever came along. I play with some country people around town here as well that I was doing all at the same time as that. Yeah, just whatever comes along,
Did you find that having a bigger or a higher profile gig got you some of those other local gigs, and were you treated a little bit differently now that you had played on some larger stages in front of up to 50,000 people at some of these festivals? They're unbelievable. And it seems though the credibility may kind of go up a little bit. Did you find that happened for you around town? You could maybe play with some of the better people and could choose?
Maybe a little bit, but I found I still find that most of the gigs that I do are based on, showing up on time and being a decent human being to hang out with and those kinds of things. I mean, some people might be a little bit impressed by that stuff, but for the most part, I mean, most of the people that I play music with have done that as well, already. I mean, I've been very fortunate to play with a lot of the top people in the country scene for sure. And so, yeah, I mean, if that was there, I mean, I certainly wasn't looking for it, and I don't know if I really noticed it too much. I think what it did for me though is it gave me personal confidence that I could now go out onto a big stage and be okay, not be dealing with nerves, which has always been something I've kind of struggled with a little bit. So
right.
So now I believe I have certainly a different level of confidence to before going out and accepting something like that. Like when I filled in for Chad Melchert with Gord Bamford, for example, it was, the first stage was Havelock Jamboree out near you there. And with, I don't know how many people were in the audience. I think they said 12,000, and I had never played with the band before. And it was, in the old days, I would have been, probably just frozen with fear and nerves. And we pulled it off, and about halfway through the set, Gord introduced me, and I remember he said something like, I wasn't sure if I was going to introduce this guy, because if he screwed up really badly, I was just going to carry on, but he's doing pretty well, so we're going to introduce him. So yeah. So that, that's what I mean. I think, and that's what I think the guys that do that on a regular basis just get into that mode where you almost, it's not comfort, but you're not in shock, and you're not, fearful of every second that's passing by. And so for me,
yes,
those experiences, doing those things, just like anything else, if you do it often enough, 10,000 hours, which I don't have on big stages, but I have enough to be a lot more confident than I would have been, many years ago. So.
Yeah. And playing with a click and playing with tracks sometimes, or loops,
yep.
and or technology and things like that. I watched an interview with Jim Riley where he runs the tracks. He's got two Macs, and I'm sure you know all this stuff. And he goes, I get paid the band leader's salary because I deal with all of this other stuff, and if things go haywire, I'm the one that has to solve it. So he goes, I like that responsibility. So he's running the Pro Tools rig or whatever or whatever they're running for their tracks. But do you run, or have you much, or does somebody else actually run track and or click?
Almost always, it seems to fall on the drummer, and so yeah, I'm pretty used to doing that as well. So yeah, I've done that. I haven't got into it as much as a lot of people that actually will, add the count into the front of stems and can manipulate things that way. I mean, I think that's at a point where I could probably get into that pretty quickly if I needed to. But so far, everything's kind of been provided, and I have it on my iPad or my laptop and start the tunes.
Was playing with a metronome or a click something you needed to work on?
Not really, because I was fortunate that when I was very young and in that original band, when we did do our, trust me, on some of those live gigs, we should have been playing to a click. But when I listened to, when we were recording, there was already sort of that was, early to mid 80s. And there was already a lot of, precision that was being demanded of music in general. And so fortunately for me, I was still pretty young when I was exposed to that. And so I feel like I've been doing it most of my life anyway. So I don't find it difficult at all. It's important to get down for sure. I know people who maybe didn't do that when they were younger, and then they're challenged with it when they're maybe in their 30s, and all of a sudden somebody's asking them to play to a click, and they find it a bit of a struggle at first. But fortunately for me, that wasn't really the case. So
that's awesome. What Gretsch drums do you own? Are you anywhere near your drums at this point?
I am. I'm sitting in front of my favorite set that I set up a couple weeks ago, and I'll show you these. And then I brought out just one tom of each of the other kits that I have.
I love it. Just
to show off, because that's how I am. I'll do this. I don't know if that's working well or not, but these are my. This kit, actually, I think I mentioned to you last time, these were actually a rosewood finish, but the finish had cracked. Somebody had left them out or something or got them really cold, and it wasn't just checked. The bass drum actually had quite a bit of bad sort of fading happen to it. So at the time, I was actually working with Ed Peck at EPEC Drums, and I asked Ed if he would refinish them for me, but to put on the least amount of paint as possible. And this is a urethane, what we call direct gloss or single stage urethane. So there's no clear coat over this. The idea was to go with as little paint as possible. So that's what these have on them. And black, it was, to me at the time, was the easiest way to do that. I mean, I've since refinished another kit that I can show you here as well. Well, not me personally, but I've had friends or colleagues do it and do the work. And this kit has what's called a tri-stage in the automotive industry, where there's actually a mid coat that's tinted as well. It's like there's a base for color, and there's a mid coat of clear that's been tinted with the color, and then a clear coat over top of that. So that this kit, when you get lighting on it, it looks fairly boring until you get lighting on it, and then it just absolutely sort of sizzles with color and brilliance and sparkle, and it's pretty whizzy. I'll show you those. And you know what? All the paint that's on them, I don't think it really is affecting the tone anyway. I think with the black ones, I just didn't want to take a risk because I love the way they sound so much. And if anything, they might even sound better. And the red, dark red guys are, they sound just as good as they did before we refinished them. So, but I'll show you those. So this is a 10-inch drum from the kit that we refinished. I don't know if any of that stuff is kind of sparkle at all is coming out.
Oh man,
but that's a USA custom kit as well.
Incredible. What year are those? Are those 80s? Or are those 1980s drums? Yep. Yeah.
That one. And here is a Renown kit. This is with
Yeah.
the die-cast tubes, and that's in the cherry burst finish.
Yep.
And they're really neat drums too. I find them to have almost like a birch-like punch to them, you know?
Right. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
pretty fast sounding. I had exactly a kit in that cherry burst finish.
Yeah. And then I have this kit, which I saw a little Tom on the Gretsch, what's it called? You know, where you buy the clothing and things like that. That Gretsch site.
Gretsch gear.
They were calling this ice blue. And it's a solid paint as well.
Okay. Wow. Wow. You've got a nice choice of drum kits and finishes. And were signals a little funky there, Gerard? Sorry, folks. The good old internet. And we are going to bring Mr. Gerard Gannon back. That's what happens. Right in the middle of the drum kit tour. Amazing. Beautiful, beautiful colors and varieties of drums, and a beautiful era of Gretsch drums that he plays. I encourage you to check out Gerard's social media, and on there are lots of pictures. There we are. I think maybe the internet was drooling.
Yes.
It was drooling.
That must be what it was.
What are the size bass drums that you have? Do you have a variety, or are they mostly 22s?
They're all 22s except for the Catalina Club kit, which is a 14 by 20. And that 14 by 20 size I haven't had since my first little cheap drum set. And it's a great size. It's so versatile. And on those drums being lighter, I kind of use those on the local, lousy load-in type of gigs where it's going to be upstairs or a long ways away to the stage. So they've been great for that. They still sound fantastic. They're mahogany shells, and it's quite thin and a 30 degree bearing edge. And they're not as powerful, of course, as
right.
the US Customs, but the sound is very, very pleasant. It's nice and soft feeling and kind of fat and warm, a little bit vintagey in a lot of ways, to my ear. I don't know if you agree with that, if you've played them before, but they almost have kind of a vintage sound, and you can certainly get them to sound very much like an old vintage kit.
That's amazing. We actually, our signal got kind of wonky. I don't know if you showed us those on but what's the color? What are the sizes of that kit?
The Catalina Club kit? Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe I lost you before that. It's a piano black. Okay. And so it was a Club Jazz with the 20. So it was 20, 12, 14, and I added a 10 and a 16. And I didn't really need the 10, but the 16 is nice to have for sure. That 16 sounds amazing for what are considered inexpensive drums these days, for sure.
Right. I know there's many Gretsch artists that I've spoken to, and they all rave over the mahogany kits. They're blown away at how great that they sound, and the fit and finish is amazing. I did have a street kit, Catalina street kit, and that was, I couldn't believe, like, for a little 16-inch bass drum, just how loud it was and how much the toms projected, and the snare drum was good too. So
yeah, and this has got a piano lacquer finish. It's a paint, and it's just gorgeous. Like the gloss level is ridiculous, and the quality of workmanship is excellent. And I know they've improved over the years with the Catalina series of drums, and they've always been good, but now they're exceptional for the money that Gretsch is charging for these things. I think they're phenomenal.
It's crazy. Yeah. When I first became an endorser, saw the price list, I was looking down going, I couldn't believe how they're affordable already in those offshore, but they're crazy as an
Yeah.
endorser. Speaking of endorsers, how long have you been a Gretsch artist? How did it happen? And what does it mean to you to be part of the family?
I believe it was 2012 that I officially became a Gretsch artist. And for me, it was pretty huge because I'd played the drums for so long and loved them so much for so long. And, you know, certainly like drums in general and love all sorts of drums. But the Gretsch thing, as I mentioned, just because of when I was younger, maybe, and just loving that sound at an early age, just to me, there's nothing quite like them. And so to actually be affiliated with them in some way as a, Z level endorsement artist or whatever I am is just exciting and awesome. And I appreciate it very much. And the guys in Canada here have been just phenomenal to deal with. And so it's just been a great joy of mine to be able to represent the brand and to be part of the family with all of these amazing players like yourself. And yeah, there's, what can I say? It's pretty much a dream come true to be part of it.
It is, and to be able to interact with other endorsers and artists, and you never ever feel like anybody is above you. You're not treated as, from Fred and Dinah to Paul and Josh at the factory, or Andrew Shreve. You're never looked down upon like you're not Steve Ferroni or you're not Vinny. It's like, hey man, good to see you, and like, what can we do for you?
Right.
It's great.
That's pretty amazing.
David McAllister is wonderful, and then I have Andy DeCoulis as oh man, and he's the best. Yeah, it's a great relationship. I had a short-lived Thai drum endorsement.
Oh yeah,
and they were good too, but they just didn't have that great Gretsch sound. So that's amazing. What recordings or gigs are you most proud of?
Yeah, I don't know if we're all like this or what, but I tend to remember, good gigs. And so I've got about 5 in my entire life.
Sure.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kind of kidding, but kind of not. Yeah, I remember playing I think it was the first time I played at Havelock with Jason Blaine, and I don't know why I bring up Havelock. It seems like it's
awesome.
a pretty good experience for me, but I remember we played, and it was kind of odd because we played after Rosanne Cash, and her band had been up, and they were so inspiring to watch, and she was so amazing. And we were all kind of joking, like, what are we doing following that? And then we went out and we rocked really hard, and it was a great gig. It was lots of fun, and I feel personally like I played pretty well on that. And yeah, so that was one for sure that I'm pretty proud of. I remember playing a couple of shows, one in particular with Brett in Toronto that for some reason nothing was in the way, so to speak. And
fire, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and I've had a gig or two with Gord Bamford filling in for Chad that were really good. And yeah, just the same as probably anybody else. You have the ones that stand out as just, it was easy, and you kind of got to that level that we all sort of pursue that,
Indeed. Where in Toronto was the Brett gig?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that, and I can't remember the name of the place. I'd have to look it up.
Was it a festival gig?
There were a lot of acts playing, and it wasn't a festival. It was more of a showcase kind of a gig, I would call it. And there were bands before us, and there were bands after us. And, lots of times in those situations when you're struggling a little bit, maybe with the back line, or I remember actually there was somebody had to run and get some Zildjian hi-hats for me because there was no hi-hats in the back line because I didn't travel with cymbals on that. And so what was great about it is they ended up getting me some beautiful 14-inch New Beat hats. It sounded amazing, and I think I was playing the cymbals that you play for the rest of the setup was
right. The Dreams.
The Dreams, yeah. And it was just one of those gigs that just went well. It was a lot of fun to play, and the band sounded great, and yeah, it was a good one.
It's nice when the stars align, and the back line, the mix sounds great. The band's playing well, there's nothing like that. I really personally miss traveling and seeing different places And I miss the bandmates for sure.
Yeah.
Most of all, miss the audiences and things. Do you have any projects? So how anything coming up? I know you're finishing the studio. Are you doing treating the room, or are you just getting together the audio interface and things like that? Or are you actually physically building something?
So I kind of took over the basement of our house,
Good man.
and, which is fine. You know, I brought down my digital piano, beautiful, what is it, a Yamaha FP7 or something like that, weighted keys and stuff like that. So that's down here now. I have my nylon string guitar, which I will not say I'm much of a guitar player, but it's down here now. And then I have my interface with my very recordable black USA Customs that
Yes.
sound absolutely killer. And so I've just got to, I just picked up some overhead mics that I've got to set up here, and I'll probably add a few more preamps because I want to double up miking on the kick drum and snare drum at least, and hopefully have room for a room mic as well. So that's still sort of a slow going process. I find my time so limited that I get down here and I kind of just want to play rather than go to work on okay, I got to set this up and I got to set that up, and but it's coming, and it's you know, I can't call the setting up the studio part. That's not a big joy of mine. You know, if I could pay someone to do it, that's what I would do. A lot of people love that stuff. They totally nerd out on it. I really don't. It doesn't really float my boat that much. I want to play drums. I want to play music. I want to be creative. But when it comes to capturing it and knowing all the ins and outs of capturing it, it doesn't really do a lot for me, you know?
Right.
So I've been trying to finish some songs that in some cases were started 20 years ago. So that's kind of been a little bit of the focus for me. And I think coming out of all of this, I hope to have a project that at least plays a little bit of that stuff, and maybe mixes with, I've got other friends that are writing right now as well. And maybe we'll end up doing something collaborative that way in a live, situation. I'm not sure yet, but, for me, even if that doesn't happen with buddies, I'll probably in some way have my own project, I believe, coming out of this. It's just when you have this time to kind of get back into yourself in a way. I'm totally with you. I miss everything. I miss the audiences. I miss the bandmates for sure. I miss that camaraderie and the challenge of playing live and doing it well. And but you know, having all this time to ourselves in a way and be a little bit self-absorbed in some ways is taking me back to when you're naturally self-absorbed, when you're in your, you know, late teens, early 20s, and it's allowed me to focus a little bit more, as I say, on my own sort of creative outlet, I guess. And that's been really fun to explore and try and develop and finish. And who knows, it's probably just crap, as they say, but it's just fun to do. And for me, it's fun to try and bring in a lot of the different styles of music that I love and try and create something with it. And that's challenging to play, but it's also, you know, for me, it's part of what makes me up as a musician. So I want to somehow get that out there before I'm too old to do it. That's
really good. That's a really great. When you sit down to play or practice, what do you work on these days?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I don't really work on a lot of stuff. I should be. My hands are probably in really terrible shape because I've got my little pad station set up, and I probably touch that every once a month or so, and so I'm barely keeping my hands up. As far as I still like to play to music that I don't feel 100% comfortable with. So that can range anywhere from like fairly basic groove stuff, but it may be in maybe different genres, but still fairly basic. I've dug into some Steve Ferrone again lately, and just trying to emulate that pocket, you know, or let's say the Steve Gadd Band stuff, which I don't know if you've heard the latest record, but it's just phenomenal, and Steve's so amazing. And so I like digging into that stuff, and you know, I wouldn't say I'm not transcribing parts, and I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not doing the stuff that maybe I would have done 20 years ago, but I am playing along and kind of getting the more the vibe of it, I guess, than actually strictly tearing it apart and studying it. Yeah, so pretty much that I think is mainly what I've been doing. I'm not sitting here. I do have Paul DeLong's
The Long Way.
The Long Way set up, but I stopped at, I think, page 3 or something. I'm not sure. I just went, this is too hard for me. It hurts my brain. I actually was thinking maybe the best approach would be to get together with Paul via Skype. I know he does lessons that way, and maybe, working on that a little bit. And, I think we're all doing a little bit of polyrhythmic stuff, whether we know it or not, anyway. But it would be, for me, it's more just having a better understanding of it and feeling a little more confident with it for whatever reason, because I'm certainly not using that on country gigs too much. But
no,
again, the challenge, right? We always want to challenge ourselves and be the best we can be, and go where you're interested, and that is a bit of an interest of mine. It's again, at this stage of the game, it's not like I'm shedding or anything like that. I sit down and I play music because I love it, and it's that's the way I learned when I was really young. And so this whole thing has almost been like a rediscovery of what got me into drumming in the first place, and that's been fun. Not putting a bunch of pressure on myself. I'm not going to come out of this with a million more blazing chops or anything like that. Still, the importance of groove for me is just what has really hit me extremely hard in the last 4 or 5 years, and in a good way. And I'm finding the beauty in groove, and I used to sort of pay lip service to that, 10 or 15 years ago. I'd say groove is important, and I thought that I was doing the right things to pursue it. But realizing I'm still spending way too much time just goofing around, chopping out with weird chops that I'll never use on a gig. And so I feel like I'm at a different place now, and really understanding groove a little better, and trying to get better at it.
That is so key.
It's like I think all of us, yeah.
You'll find, and as you know, I've been recording here, just a basic setup since April, May. And what I find that I do is I play along with sitting in with a big band, that series, and I'll play along with that. But I listen to it, and I'm learning how to play that material, because some of it's pretty tough.
Oh yeah.
Better. So the recording thing has gone hand in hand with just kind of being able to record myself practice, and that it sounds better than on my Zoom or on my phone, or not recording it at all. And therefore, you don't really give yourself any constructive feedback. But it's but I love the process, and now learning to play piano again after a long time. And
that's great.
Pretty terrible, but I love it, and I torture myself for sure, for sure, about an hour every day, and really love it. So
yeah, that's good.
Man, I really appreciate you coming back here. We have power still, so this is going to go to my Instagram, and I will upload this to the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break YouTube channel, and so you'll be able to show it to all your friends and family that want to watch these kinds of things. Seriously, we do get some good views, and it's nice to archive and go back and look at these things at a later date. What else did I want? We have about just over 2 minutes or so. Any advice for young musicians who want to have a career as a drummer?
Well, first of all, thanks for doing this again, Neil. I know we kind of ran into some glitches, and then you mentioned, let's do this again on Friday the 13th in 2020.
Perfect.
What could go wrong? What could go wrong, right? But no, thank you, man. Thanks for doing this. And I've been enjoying all of these weekly great Gretsch drum breaks, afternoon drum breaks. So, and it's been great getting to know you over the past couple of years too, We haven't actually met face to face yet, but it sure has been nice, whether it's messaging or doing this and stuff like that. So, as far as I'm not one of these guys that, proffers advice every second of the day by any stretch. But the only thing I would say is, I think I kind of touched on this last time, is I think you have to figure out what you want to do and just go for it. And music is certainly one of those kinds of things that, you are blazing your own trail, so to speak, because almost everybody around you is going to say, are you sure you want to do that? What about music as an avocation? Or I think it's a little easier now. Maybe the support networks are there a little bit better than they were when maybe you and I were growing up. But you're not going to be a doctor, you're not going to be a lawyer, you're not going to be whatever. That was certainly more commonplace when I was growing up, those kinds of pressures to maybe it hasn't changed. I don't know. Maybe that's still the same. I'm not young, so I don't know. But but I still I think it really comes down to digging in and sticking to your guns and going for it, 100% going for it, and you know, doing what you love. You know, but like I said earlier, there can be different ways to do that too. I mean, it's a matter of what you're willing to sacrifice as well. And there are a lot of sacrifices, as you know, to being a full-time musician. And some of us choose not to go with 100% that level of sacrifice, and some do. And you know, I know everybody sort of across the gamut as far as that kind of life experience with music. And would I say somebody's more happy than somebody else? Not really. I think it comes down to just sort of being true to yourself and going for it, whatever floats your boat kind of thing. And that's all I can say, I guess.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the insight. Thanks for getting to know you better. Thank you for sharing your beautiful drums around there and your time. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, Neil.
All the best in 2020. I hope that this is things improve, that we actually do get to meet face to face, maybe at a NAMM one year, something like
Sure.
that, or at the Gretsch factory. That'd be fun.
You name the date, man. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, I know you definitely were going to see Mr. Steve Gadd in Vegas and different places like that. So, okay, we will definitely keep in touch. Thank you so much. All the best to you, Gerard. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.